The next topic is crawl space signs. I love talking about crawl spaces. Again, they're nasty, but they're great opportunities for people to make their homes better. And this is probably one of the biggest topics that we differ, again, from code. Again, I'll say it, we fix all the houses that were built to code. I was actually with a friend the other day, and he introduced me to his buddy who builds these big multi-million-dollar homes, and he was really proud about it and everything. And he goes, "Justin, what do you do?" And I go, "I fix all the stuff that you screw up." So anyway, so real quickly, we have an agenda. Again, this is why I'm bringing this up. You don't need to know any more about me, unless anybody wants to talk afterwards about Virginia Tech, because I could talk about that forever. All right. This one's going to be a little bit more interactive, I hope. And even though the last one had a lot of great questions, but I want to have interaction throughout this. So I'm going to be asking you all a lot of questions to just kind of get some interaction. And I've been told when you give your answer, make it sort of brief so we don't take up the whole time. But what is a crawl space? Why? My question is, why do homes have a crawl space to even begin with? Why do they build a home with a crawl space?
Because the basement costs too much.
Exactly. Exactly right. They build a house with a crawl space because it costs less money for the builder to make. That's it. There's no other reason. That's it. Right? It costs less and lets them make more money. Now, I guess there could be situations that maybe rock was there and they didn't want to have to blast it out to make a basement, but theoretically, they make a crawl space so that they don't have to dig out a full basement and have more product and labor and materials to build it, and they can build it faster. So just let that sink in, and that's what we actually tell our customers when we go to, hey, you know why your house was built with a crawl space? It was cheap, right? Cheap and easy. You like that, right? As a homeowner, cheap and easy. So what is a crawl space? Anybody have a definition for what a crawl space is? We determine why, but what is it? Basically, right? The crappy area underneath the house. I'll second that. And they typically look like this, right? They got fiberglass falling all over the place. They're nasty. They got rodents in it. It smells like mold. It's wet and muddy. It's nasty. If you're lucky, it's got gravel in there to smash up your knees, right? Right? You got to crawl under and over plumbing and ductwork, and you're cussing the whole time you're in there, right? So kind of looks like that. That's probably a nice one, but anybody have a good crawl space story to tell me about? It's Sunny again. We got two, but give me what was your worst crawl space situation?
So in the past 5 years, I've been bit by one black snake, one copperhead, one brown recluse spider. I put the picture in my presentation.
I saw it on Facebook.
Stitches in my head.
Yeah.
Because I was afraid of another snake, and I jumped up and hit a steel beam.
Did it knock you out?
And, last week, they had to throw a rope into a crawl space to pull me out because I got stuck.
We've had to do that too.
On my foot, and they pulled me out.
We've done that too.
Don't do that.
Good. You had a good one?
The crawl space I went into was basically I was with two other guys that we were doing the remediation, we were cleaning it off. Apparently the previous owner didn't want to clean it and had all the debris, but also had a ton of animal feces.
Oh, yeah.
The guy comes out and says, "Do you know what's in here?" I'm like, "Not really." He said there's just crap all over the place.
Yeah.
He literally had a bag it all.
Literally crap. Yeah. We see that all the time. I mean, those are money for us, but yeah, there's nasty stuff. I mean, like Sonny said, I've been in crawl spaces where there's eyes staring back at you, and you just kind of whisper at it, "Hey, you stay there, buddy, and I'll stay over here," right? Anybody been in a nice, what would you define as a nice crawl space?
Concrete.
Concrete?
Floor,
Okay.
Fly, no mildew. I was in one of McLean.
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Stand up, yeah, right? You can stand up in it. I heard concrete floor. It was dry, right?
I've seen a couple of new construction as of late.
Uh-huh.
But basically, the unfinished basement is the crawl space is an unfinished basement about 4 or 5 feet high.
Yeah. We're seeing more of that. I think the builders are putting a little bit more attention into crawl spaces. You know, again, I'm not a code expert, yet I'm here talking to a bunch of home inspectors, but there's emphasis being put on crawl spaces. It's becoming more known by homeowners that that's a situation. Used to be that we would go into houses and people didn't even know they had a crawl space. I think the worst one I ever had, I tell this story, was when I did HVAC. And it was in Falls Church, I'll never forget it. And I met the guy for lunch to give him an estimate for replacing his heating and air conditioning. Single story Rambler. The furnace was 80% furnace sitting in a closet on the first floor, right? It's Rambler. Refrigerant lines went down into the crawl space and then out the back of the house. I walk around the back of the house. Air conditioner sitting there, so I get the size of it. I'm talking to him and I just go, okay, well, the refrigerant lines. And I look at the crawl space door and I'm like, well, that's a big crawl space door. Shouldn't have any problem replacing the refrigerant lines. I'm a great salesperson, so do I go in a crawl space? Oh, hell no, right? So I'm not going in that crap, right? So I said, okay, well, I know we can replace the refrigerant lines and ask you, do you want the unit here? You want to move? Sell the system. And the first day we got there, the crew called me and said, we're not doing this. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, you're just going to have to come here and see this. I said, okay. And he said, we're not replacing these refrigerant lines. You get some other crew here. So I went there and I said, what's going on? And they were like, walk around the back of the house with me. Long story short, when I went into the house, it stunk. I would say it stunk. And I didn't say anything to the homeowner because that would be rude. But he had his main sewer line had broken in his crawl space. And he had a nice soupy swimming pool in the crawl space. So needless to say, we got in the attic and replaced the refrigerant lines through the attic. But I said, sir, and you know what he said? I was wondering why my house smelled so bad. I'm like, good Lord, you got to be kidding me. But it's just an amazing spot, right? The crawl space is kind of this secret little space that most homeowners don't even know that exists, why it's there, what's it about, and all those different things. So I always like to open with tell me some experiences that you've had with crawl spaces conversations, because we could all sit around a table and drink a couple IPAs and probably share some more stories about that. But so what I want to talk about, I was unable to do this. I have in our sales software, our salespeople go out and talk about crawl spaces and basements, and we have these little videos that we narrate, but I was not able to embed it into this. So I'm going to do it without the video. And so what I want to talk about is old crawl space thinking, AKA vented crawl spaces, okay? And again, I don't know what the codes read, and frankly, it doesn't matter to me, to be honest. But old crawl space thinking was, we build a crawl space because it's cheaper. And originally they put vents in it. Why did they put the vents in the crawl space? So get rid of the stink. It was good. What is it? Thank you. The bane of everybody's existence, humidity, to let the humidity out, right? But let me ask a question. Let's go back to the first presentation. What was that thing called, stack effect? So at the top of the house, you're blowing air, it's positive pressure. What's the pressure in a crawl space? Negative. So is the air going out? No, it's coming in, right? And then the second conversation, or one of the other conversations that Eric said, he likes IPAs, and I got to remember that next time we hang out, is that and you wrote it down hopefully, for every degree in Fahrenheit that you drop the temperature of air, the humidity goes up 2.2. So if we're sucking in air in the summertime, that's 90 degrees and maybe 70 or 80% humidity, and it's going into the crawl space, what's the average temperature of a crawl space? The temperature of a crawl space. Yeah. Crawl space, not an attic, the crawl space beneath the house. The earth, yeah, it's lower, right? Earth is 50, so it's probably 60. So do you think sucking in hot, humid air, hitting cold surfaces might increase humidity? So think about the science behind that and the ventilating a crawl space. So we call it old crawl space thinking. It doesn't make much sense. Many of the homes that have crawl spaces also have the HVAC down there, right? which is also cold in the summer as it's blowing cold air through the ductwork and rusting, right? Because we're creating condensation. And so what did they do? They said, what we need to do is add, I think code is R19 for floors. Is that right? I think I got one right. So anyways, so they take R19 fiberglass bats and they jam them up on the ceiling of the crawl space, right? Works well, works real well, right? Paper to the people, right? Paper to the people, paper up, paper to the people. So if you get in there and see paper, it's wrong. But it doesn't even matter. It's the fact that what do we learn about fiberglass? Other than it should be in a landfill. Right? Fiberglass, right, is susceptible to wind washing. It also, if you use bat insulation, every time you have the 4-foot bat stop here and the new one stop here, there's a gap that air can get through. So now we've put fiberglass in there to make things, the floor warm, but it doesn't work real well, right? So you got hot, humid air coming in here, hitting cold surfaces, raising humidity in an area that's got all kinds of wood that's doing what? Holding up the house. Pretty important for that stuff to not get moldy or rot, right? All right, so anytime you have organic material, which is material that was once living, wood, leather, right? All the wood sports in the crawl space, and 70% or higher humidity, you grow mold, and the mold eats out the wood for fuel source, and the house falls down. Sagging floors, all kinds of nasty stuff, right? So we put fiberglass in there. The humidity from the earth, because things move from more to less. So a lot of the stuff I'm talking about ties back to the original building science stuff that was not rocket science, but building science, right? So the ground has got moisture in it, right? Where's that moisture going?
There.
Up in the house, right? That's probably not cool, right? So we've got new crawl space thinking, and one of the things we do amongst many other different things we do is encapsulate crawl spaces. And so when we talk about the crawl spaces and how to make these nasty, smelly, stinky, disgusting, rodent-filled, animal-filled areas better for the homeowner, okay? So old crawl space thinking is just that, the idea that we need to ventilate a crawl space. And I don't know if I should tell the story now, but I'll wait till later. It's always amazing when we go to these houses and we get mold people to make recommendations of what to do to fix it, which is add an exhaust fan to the crawl space. There's not enough ventilation. It's almost like that guy from earlier that, cut open a ridge vent in the encapsulated attic, right? So why fix a crawl space? What are some good reasons? Sonny's going to talk about it too. We've talked about it. Humidity. Humidity is just evil, right? Control the humidity in the area. The mold, the mildew, wood rot. And there's been statistics that say up to 50% of the air that you breathe in a home comes from that crawl space. Why? Stack effect, right? We're sucking air in. It's going through the house, rising and leaving. So up to 50% of the air. My salespeople do this, and I would encourage you to do it as well. If you go into a crawl space, carry a thing of Febreze or Lysol or something with you that smells good, and you tell the customer, up to 50% of the air you breathe is down in that nasty spot, right? And they go, whatever, man. Give the Febreze a couple of sprays. When you get out of the crawl space and go back upstairs, they're like, hey, what'd you do down there? It smells great. I was in your crawl space. I thought you said you couldn't breathe that air, right? You're proving it to them, that stack effect, and the air is coming from that crawl space up into the house. So up to 50% of that nasty air is down there. You guys described some nasty stuff. I can't imagine living in a house that's got a crawl space and breathing the air that's coming from that. Ooh. All right, think about all the nasty crawl spaces you've been in. Also, it makes the floors cold, right? In the winter, that cold air is being sucked in across the floor. We also know that rodents get in there and they love fiberglass. You know why? Because it's nice and warm. They get on top of that fiberglass and they can sit against the warm or warmer floor than the crawl space, and they live there. But what happens to that fiberglass when rodents are on it or it's got a high humidity situation? Falls on the ground. Now you got nothing, no insulation. Yes, sir.
What would the percentage be of air coming into the upstairs if the crawl space were encapsulated?
I don't know if there's ever been any studies on that, but that's like saying, what's the percentage of air that you breathe from your living room if you're in the kitchen? Because they're now inside the house. It should be thought of as it's inside the house. It's obviously a lot less than 50%, but the big thing about it is it's not nasty. It's not got rodent feces or urine in it. It's not got mud and it's not got mold in it when we're done with them. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but it's just that we're going to change the indoor environment. We're going to change it to an indoor environment and then control the indoor environment. Okay. High energy bills, right? We talked earlier, for every basketball that leaves that they paid to heat or cool, it sucks one in at the bottom. So if you are allowing that to happen, then it's going to cause high energy bills because the HVAC is probably the most expensive thing that they run in their house. And if it runs more than it needs to, there you go. And what I would tell you is we go back to that rolling down the window in the car. So you roll down the passenger seat and you get no wind through, but then you roll down the driver window and now you get air to go through because it can. And that's what we're doing by stopping the air at the top and at the bottom of the house, is to stop the airflow and lessen the stack effect to fix comfort, energy, and indoor air quality problems. So it lessens odors, right? I'd seriously go do it. Buy Febreze and take it in the crawl space. You'll blow their mind. It's awesome. Lessen the ability for pests to enter the home. We get tons and tons of calls for pests in homes, attics and crawl spaces. There is one of my friends owns a pest control company out in Percival, and he used to work with us very often. There's some person that wrote kind of the rule book of pest control, and he's pretty well known throughout the industry. And basically the statement is something to the effect of, rodent and pest infestations in a home are not due to lack of spraying chemicals or maintenance. It's because you have holes in your house, right? So you think about a crawl space. How many crawl space doors have you ever gone to and it's just a piece of rotted plywood that's kind of leaning up against it, and most all of them, right? With a brick laying on top of it or something like that. Insects, rodents, and more. And also it can create sagging and bouncing floors and structural problems, because if the mold is there eating out the structural integrity of the house, it compromises that structural integrity, right? So how and why? Now we know why we fix a crawl space. What things can we correct? When we go into our crawl space, we're encapsulating the crawl spaces for all of these reasons and sometimes more, okay? All right, there's 4 steps to fixing a crawl space. Very simple. First, fix groundwater leakage. When we go and do inspections, just like you're looking for efflorescence and cinder block. Why is that? Moisture. You're proving, even if it hasn't rained, it's rained the last couple of days, but even if we've had a drought and it's dry in there, you can show the customer, I know it's dry now, but we haven't gotten rain in 3 weeks. Look at this, right? That's just the mineral deposits being left over from that column of water that was sitting in that cinder block, because we know that things move from more to less. So as the air and the water in that cinder block is evaporating, it's pulling all the nutrients from, or the minerals, and leaving them on the outside of that cinder block wall. You had water in here. Can you see that? Okay. So how do we fix groundwater leakage? Uh-oh. What'd I do? How do you fix groundwater leakage? Yes, sir. Right. So all those add a sump pump into the crawl space, collect the water there and get it out far away from the house, not just right up against the foundation for it to come right back in as a recycled water. Right. Sump pump is basically how we do that, but we do address things like the downspouts, the grade of the land, and things like that. Yeah. Grading sometimes works, right? But really that house was built and you've got this loose soil that was dug out to create the foundation, whether it be a basement or a crawl space. and then they backfilled it, and when they backfilled it, they probably didn't put a little dirt in and tamp it and then or even remove the beer cans when they did that, right? So they put that back and you have loose water, and we know that air and water take the path of what? So if it's raining, and even if it's 20 feet away from the house, it's collecting and pushing it up against the side of the house. So you get hydrostatic pressure. So yes, grading, discharging water, downspouts, all those different things, but a sump pump in the crawl space to collect the water and get it out far away. Okay. Once you get that water out of there, standing water or any water, right, you isolate the house from the earth. How you do that? There you go. That stops the more from more going to less, right? The moisture in the earth stops at the vapor barrier so that it can't get into that crawl space. Yes, sir.
What's your minimum millimeter size for vapor barrier?
So what's code?
6?
We use 20. We fix houses that were built to code. We call 6 mil plastic a glorified trash bag. Right. So code is 6. I actually knew the answer to that, but I wanted you to answer. So 6 mil is code, but we use 20 on the floor and 12 on the walls when we're doing water. Yeah. It will not rip. It's 7 layers and it's antimicrobial, so it won't mold. We give samples, we give to our customers. I mean, you can't rip it. If you stare at 6 mil the wrong way, it'll rip on its own, right?
Either that or freeze.
Yeah, right. Yes, sir.
I'm presuming that you wouldn't even consider doing it. And I think you wouldn't consider doing it because you've educated your client before you started giving them proposals. But what we're frequently seeing now over on the Delmarva Peninsula, because of the raised water table and everything, there are companies that they'll come out and they'll tell you they're going to encapsulate their crawl space.
Yes.
They'll do the floor. They'll go up the wall without insulation and they'll stop at the bottom of the trusses or joists.
Yeah.
How much of a cost saving do they do to offer that as opposed to doing an insulated crawl space where you might even dump some air in and call it a conditioned crawl space? Either do it right or don't do it. But there are companies, are they just doing this to earn money? Cheaper work?
I'm not even going to answer that one, but yeah. Yes. So why? So there are situations in which we go out to a house and the homeowner is concerned with water and humidity. May not need to use insulation there, but we do because we're going to do it the right way. And think about this, now that we're making the crawl space inside the building envelope, right? It's now interior space, technically speaking. That fiberglass on the ceiling gets thrown out. So, and I appreciate all the leads that come from the home inspectors to tell the homeowner, hey, flip that over because the paper is facing down, it should be facing up. You know what we tell them? Hey, we're going to throw all that, I almost said the bad word. We're going to throw all that stuff away. And where it belongs in the landfill with the rest of the fiberglass, and we're going to do this the right way and teach you. But it depends upon the homeowner. It's an educational process. Here's why we're doing it. What do you hope to achieve by whatever we do, right? The term encapsulating a crawl space is so, to one company it means one thing, to you it means something different, and why. But to me, the biggest thing is, like Sonny said earlier, we're treating the people within that house. Tell me why you're doing this. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve, right? And then we deliver that product to them. But I think that there are companies that that will do that without the insulation, and it's just how they do it. But now they're going to have cold floors, I think. Well, I know because then they call us.
But if they don't insulate the walls of the perimeter of the crawl space, they need the insulation up underneath.
Right.
You know, it's underneath.
Once you turn that into a conditioned space, you're changing where the building envelope is. Right. So if I go back and trace that other picture, now the building envelope of the crawl space is the floor and the walls. So you don't need that fiberglass if the floor and the walls are done, right? Right. So there are companies out there that will do that. Yes. We do not. You still need to have a good thermal barrier and air barrier, and it needs to be continuous throughout. Right? If you put fiberglass in that crawl space, a ceiling, after it's been encapsulated, that's sound insulation.
Mm.
Insulation between two conditioned spaces is for sound. That's the only thing it will do. Only thing. Got a hand raised, yes.
So Greg online has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Justin, how do you seal the seams in your 20 mil? And is that something as home inspectors we should be making a note of to verify the integrity?
Yes.
And then,
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And then secondly, when do you use a spray foam application in crawls that have high water table areas, as alluded to earlier on the Delmarva Peninsula? Just
Okay.
those two questions, please.
So to answer those best that I possibly can, we don't work in the Delmarva area. We're not Delaware. We're only Northern Virginia, down south to Charlottesville in this area, but we're part of a dealer network called Contractor Nation, and there are dealers that are out there doing some of the things you guys are talking about. But we use a tape. We are part of a dealer network where we buy all of our products from a place up in Seymour, Connecticut called Contractor Nation. And so we use a very heavy tape. The tape, you can't even rip it. You've got to use scissors to cut it. So you should overlap the seams and then tape it. We also, because we usually use 3 layers on the floor, we use a dimple mat to allow water to move beneath the vapor barrier. Then we use an insulation that's about 1 inch thick on the floor, and then the 20 mil vapor barrier on top of that. And then what we'll do, because it's such a thick vapor barrier, is we take these long spikes and drive them through all 3 layers into the dirt and then have to tape over top of the spike too. So it's tape, basically. Overlap by about 6 to 8 inches and tape the seams. Now, the bigger, what a lot of these companies, well, I've seen, right? They got the 6 mil trash bags, and if you're lucky, they're taped, but they never secure them to the wall and create the vapor barrier across the wall. So a spray foam is great for that. A closed cell spray foam is great for that, to seal it against the wall or at the top of the foundation above grade, so that you still get a seal for the vapor. It can't come in and go around and up and into the, up into the rim joists and stuff like that. When do you use spray foam? You're talking about on the walls, I guess?
The walls in the scenario that you just described, but when would you consider using it on the floor deck? Like as I was saying, on the Eastern Shore, you could have 4 to 6 inches of water in these low table areas that it literally ponds underneath the house.
Yeah, you got to get rid of that water somehow before it. But I mean, we use a closed cell spray foam on our walls and rim joists to seal, which is coming up on step 3. But and then we put in some pumps. I don't think we've ever sprayed the floor, if that's what you're asking. Oh, you mean above? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
The
Get a sign
ceiling of the crawl.
sign from the sound guy to help me understand. So we'll do that when we get what we call a glorified crawl space. In our area, what happens is people have decks on the back of the house and they turn them into sunrooms and condition them. And then they put a plywood skirt around it and stuff like that, which is not really a crawl space. Has a foundation, not a wall, right? It's not for design. So we'll spray the ceiling every once in a while. I mean, there's no HVAC below to be able to help warm it in the winter or help dehumidify it in the summer. A dehumidifier is not going to work in there because it's open to the outside. So you got to put a vapor barrier down, secure it to the wall. And we have sprayed the ceiling of a crawl space before, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, the important part to note is, because we've seen other people do it, it needs to be closed cell. You're within 18 inches of grade in a crawl space, if not below it. So closed cell should be the only thing if spray foam is ever used in a crawl space, ever. Which is another reason that's all we use. I don't have to think about which one should I use. It's always closed cell. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And you're very welcome. So now that we've fixed the groundwater leakage with the downspouts, got it away, sump pump and get it away from the house, collect the water. We've isolated from the earth for humidity with the vapor barrier. Then we need to seal out outside air, right? Just like you did in your kitchen, right? They put drywall on it, they do all these different things. You got rim joists. This area here, these vents right here. You can use these decorative things, but basically we put a foam block from the inside in it and spray foam over top of it. So it'll look like a normal vent from the outside. You won't even know that that crawl space has been encapsulated until you get into it. But the rim joist above here is a good source for leakage too. So we'll typically use closed cell spray foam to seal up those rim joists. So that negative pressure doesn't allow it to suck in, okay? And then control humidity. How do you do that? HVAC system. Right? Typically, that crawl space HVAC system has enough normal leakage where it can help to condition the air, or a dehumidifier, commercial dehumidifier. And again, I'm not pimping my company, but this is a commercial grade dehumidifier that we used. Most dehumidifiers, by the capacity of it, this is 100 pints per day, are rated at what? Have you ever looked at that? Like if you go to buy a portable dehumidifier, because we'll have homeowners that'll say, I'm going to supply my own humidifier. Yours is really expensive. And I go, yeah, because it works, right? Why does it work? When you go to a Home Depot or someplace and buy a dehumidifier, it'll tell you it's 50 pints per day at what temperature? Anybody know? 80 degrees. How many crawl spaces or basements do you know that are 80 degrees? None that I know of. But these are the products that we use. They're made for crawl spaces and basements, and they're rated at 60 degrees for that reason, right? So we control the humidity to make sure that we don't have any issues of mold, mildew, and have good indoor air quality. So fix groundwater leakage, isolate the house, put the vapor barrier down, overlap tape, seal outside air from coming in because you got negative pressure, and then control humidity. Those are the 4 steps on how to treat a crawl space. Yes, sir.
Yeah, do any of those dehumidifiers come with a heat source to help temper the air in the wintertime?
I love you. That's the world's most efficient dehumidifier on the market without a reheater. So it's good that you asked that. Uses very, very little energy, but no, it does not have any type of reheater to make it more efficient. So we're not adding the heat in the wintertime. No.
Okay.
And then online.
So what brand dehumidifier do you recommend?
So ours is proprietary to where ours is called a Santa Dry Sedona. That's our brand. So of course I'm gonna say, use my brand. Sunny.
So.
But there's, but by the way, not to interrupt you, but April Air makes a good one. There are other brands out there, but ours is the Santa Dry Sedona, and it's rated at 60
I
degrees.
was just about to say that April Air and Honeywell, we have about a 5-year failure rate.
Yeah,
We typically expect them to last about 5 years. Their prices have doubled in the past 5 years.
yeah.
So typically at April Air or Honeywell, we're at 4,500, 5,000 installed.
Yeah.
And it's not a reliable product.
So
And I-
one of the things that we've done, so ours is not that expensive, but same 5-year warranty. And I was going somewhere with this. Oh, one of the things we've done when a homeowner buys a crawl space from us and they don't buy that product and there's no HVAC, I've got no way to condition or control the humidity in that space. We give them free one of those little Brookstone weather things. So we put a sensor in the crawl space and then put this thing right on the kitchen table that says, here's the temperature and humidity inside your house. Here's the temperature and humidity inside your crawl. If you see this go above 60%, you better call us. So, yeah, I mean, and we've experienced the same thing as Sunny. That product takes a beating. It runs a lot. Even in conditions you wouldn't think that it would, and it's got a 5-year warranty as well. Yeah.
If looking at your 4 steps, let's presume that there's a step initially and it says control the roof and surface wall.
Okay.
We've got all the ground taken care of. Then we go through the first 3 steps. Once you've done that perfectly, how often do you install a humidifier?
A dehumidifier?
Why would you do it if you get rid of the water? You totally encapsulate and can partially condition the crawl space.
Because, and we have that question asked, in certain weather conditions, you can have high humidity situations. Ask me how I know. I've seen it. So also, by the way, when you seal up a crawl space, what happens is you now change the pressure plane of that house too. So it may suck in from different areas above the crawl space that could create problems, but it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare, but it's peace of mind for the homeowner to know that that thing's never going to get above whatever they set it at. I mean, many of our customers don't buy that because there's HVAC ducting in there that's going to have normal leakage that'll condition the area anyway.
But they'll open a supply and dump some conditioned air in.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, maybe in part to answer that, but at my daughter's house in Richmond, she has a partial crawl space where we put in a sump pump system and vapor barrier up the walls, and insulation, no insulation under the floor.
Mhm.
And the one source of humidity with all that is through the sump pump product.
Yeah. So, man, I love you. So we have two brands. The second brand we have is 3 Pros Basement Systems, where we do these things, sump pumps and humidity control. And what's neat about our network, which is called Contractor Nation, is all of our sump pumps are airtight, sealed tops. So they're not open to allow the more water to come into the less crawl space and things like that. But yeah, that's a culprit. Yeah, I mean, you could have it. Again, it's rare, but you could have it. There was actually, Sonny and I went to, what was her name? Sue Smith. Remember, we were at Sue Smith's house in Leesburg. It was a townhome and it had a crawl space beneath it. This was fun. And we encapsulated the crawl space years ago and did not install the dehumidifier. And she called back complaining that the people were having mold grow in the house. So we went out there and we talked to her, and Sonny and I got in there and we're looking all around and there's this one spot. And Sonny's like, what's this right here? And so we go back upstairs and the water heater was right above it leaking, allowing water to go into that. So we actually even have proprietary products that we can just put a sump pit in there with a water watch alarm so that they have a plumbing leak or something like that. That could be what causes it too. Slow plumbing leak. Yeah.
I realize this is a seminar about correct way of addressing the crawl space.
Mhm.
However, from the inspector's perspective,
Yes.
what would you recommend advising the client as to the severity of the problem,
Yeah.
and also recommended remediation from the least expensive to the most expensive? These are the things that I believe us inspectors gotta.
Of course. Yes.
We gotta give them some kind of an option.
Yes. As well as we do too. So you're right on spot. Again, to go back to what Sonny said earlier, which is we're treating the people in the house, not the house. So it's a in-depth conversation. What concerns do you have with your crawl space? Why are you taking this on? What do you hope to do? Now, sometimes we hear, well, my home inspector said it looked like crap, I need to fix it. Right? Okay, well, how long have you lived in the house? Have you experienced this? Have you experienced that? Are your floors cold? Are we doing this because you have rodents? Are we doing this because you have high humidity and water? So the treatments that we put together are dependent upon what they want to achieve when done. And that's true of anything that we do, from insulation to spray foams to a sump pump in a crawl space. So you are correct. We give them options depending upon what they want to do. We have I think I started talking about it a little bit before. There are crawl spaces on the floor of our crawl spaces. In most cases, when at the beginning I said, hey, why would you do this? Because they got cold floors and because they've got rodents and because they've got water. And a lot of times it's all the above, right? That's why the rodents are in there, because they got water, right? And the snakes are in there because they got rodents, and right. So we have 3 layers on most of our crawl space systems, in which we put a dimple mat down first to allow water to move and be able to dry out underneath the vapor barrier and get to the low point. And then a layer of insulation to provide a thermal barrier because we're going to take the fiberglass out and chuck it. And then the vapor barrier, and they usually insulate the walls too. But it depends upon what they want to have done, what they are trying to achieve. And that's every single customer you go to, that's the most important question you get. What do you hope to achieve by doing this project? So that we could use the right products and put together right for you. Yes. Gentleman back there.
Yeah, I've seen, am I on?
Yeah.
No, yes, no? Okay. I've seen that in person, but online, where they spray 3 inches of foam on the floor of the crawl.
Yeah. We've never done it, so I don't know why you would do that and how or the purpose behind that, right? And earlier, that was the gentleman's, I thought that was the question he was asking me, instead of spraying on the ceiling, but on the floor. I have seen that as well. We've never done it. I don't know what purpose that serves. I don't get it.
Just sealed everything up really well.
Yeah, but to even go back to the 3 inches of closed cell, right? The temperature differential between in a crawl space and outside is so minimal, you don't need a lot of insulation. So I don't know why they're doing 3 inches. Right? I mean, I don't know. I've seen that too, and I wish I could answer that one. That's a good one. I don't know.
So you've addressed the plastic, the 3 mil, the mil and above.
All right, guys,
What about-
sloppy on the microphones?
Oh,
So you've addressed from the vapor barrier
Mhm.
above. How do you all condition the vapor barrier below? So like,
condition 4.
leveling,
Oh, we
leveling or.
Level
or
it.
Just you re-add the 57 or.
so it depends upon what the homeowner wants, right? If they're using it for storage, you probably got to level it. But if the homeowner is like, no, I never go in there, I just don't want my house to smell bad and get rodents out of there, then there's no need to level it, right? So it depends upon, it goes back to the why. Why are you doing this? What do you hope to achieve? You know, they say, oh, I've got all this stuff. I moved from a big house into this one and I got to use the crawl space for storage. Yeah, okay, well, would you like to level this? And if you do level it, that's a pain in the butt. But if you do, I tell you, the best trick is to use hand shovels and a kid's plastic sled. You could fill up the sled and then take a rope and then drag it out. But there's really no treating that. As long as the organic material, the only thing, when we go into a house, unless they're like big boulders or something like that, big chunks of cinder block, we'll remove that because that could cut the vapor barrier. But for the most part, as long as there's no organic material underneath that vapor barrier to worry about rotting out, we'll just lay it right over top of what's there, because all the products that we use are antimicrobial and non-organic. They won't rot. Which brings up something. Every once in a while, in this area where you have high moisture content and clay soil, welcome to Virginia, when you encapsulate a crawl space, we've experienced it in the 12 years I've been doing this, maybe 8 times, I'll say. The alkalinity and pH levels of the dirt below that, when they stay high humidity underneath the vapor barrier, can develop an ammonia smell like cat pee. Okay, why is that? And the reason is, for some reason, the alkalinity and the pH levels get to a perfect point where it smells like cat pee. The first time I ever saw it, I couldn't believe it. The guy didn't have any cats, and I'm like, oh, dude, something's in here. You got kids? Are they coming here peeing? Like, what's going on, right? And I went in and we opened up the crock of the sump pump. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's pee. So I called corporate, and they're like, oh, it's the dirt. And they said there's 2. You can either open it up and sprinkle lime through there to get rid of that smell, in case you guys ever get this. It's not like you're having to fix things, or install a radon system beneath the vapor barrier to exhaust. Yes, sir. We got 10 minutes, Mike, you said? Is that what it was? Thank you. Yeah, Eric?
There's an area near Manassas where you've got pressurized wood foundations and crawl spaces. Have you ever dealt with any of those? And what kind of issues
Yeah.
have you encountered?
Yeah, the thing that goes back to the education process. That is so important that my guys sit down, talk to the homeowner. This is what a crawl space is. This is why you have it. This is what's going on, and this is what we normally would do to fix that. The problem is when you get those pressurized wood foundations, you can create a situation, even though it's pressurized wood, to make it rot. And therefore, somebody was asking about spray foam, and that might be an instance where you do the sealing of the crawl space, right? So you don't create a situation where it's rotting out. We've seen it a couple times here and there. But again, it goes back to the building science of what we know, more to less, stack effect, all these different things, and asking the homeowner, what are you hoping to, why are you doing this? Now, if they say, it's funny you asked that. So there was a house that one of my guys went to the other day, and they've lived there for 15 years, and they've had to remediate mold in their crawl space 3 times since they've been there. So I'm like, well, show me the pictures. So we're looking at the pictures, and then what I realized is this was a deck that somebody had started to put a foundation around, had 6x6 posts holding up, and then they closed it in, put a ductless split system in that area. But it was just an area on piers, like a beach house, right? There's no use in encapsulating that crawl space. And what that customer was upset with is they had an OSB skirt around the whole friggin' thing. I'm like, well, yeah, that's gonna rot out. And if we do the plastic vapor barrier and up the wall, we're gonna make it rot out sooner. So that one, we switched to remove the fiberglass, spray the top, and have them come out and put lattice or something, have somebody do some decorative skirt around it, because it's not even a crawl space. It's not a foundation, it's on piers.
When the question came up and you were talking about the prep work for the floor, the crawl space, so to speak, your products, as you're doing it, serve as the protection, because if there's any equipment or anything in the crawl space, then it becomes a pedestrian traffic membrane, and you need to protect it from underneath. So what you put on top doesn't get poked through the trash you didn't do.
Right.
Your product doesn't do that. So it's sort of, if someone wanted to understand that.
Explain that again. Your
product serves as a protection barrier under the membrane on the floor.
Yes.
So it wasn't described as such.
Oh, I got you.
Your installation automatically includes that.
Yes, correct.
We've seen some places where the membrane.
I got you. Right. All you're seeing is the vapor. Right. Exactly. Because that's all our code requires. And that's why I went into saying we have 3 layers, and the first is a thick dimple mat to allow water to move, but it also protects the vapor barrier above, which is also why we use 20 mil, because you can crawl on it and it won't rip. And then a thermal barrier, and then the vapor barrier. So yes, thank you for bringing that up again. Yeah. Just a couple of stats my marketing guy put in here. That 15 to 20% of all homes have a crawl space. That's 27 million homes in the United States. And not only improves the air quality of the home, but it can also increase the resale value. Of course, you guys know that. That's what you're doing, is going out to houses and looking for those types of things. And I guess we'll bring it up to any more questions. We've got to be probably close to about 5 minutes. Somebody online?
So Remy, go ahead. His question was, what is a second layer 1 in insulation?
Thank you.
What is a what?
The second layer on the floor. The one
floor.
it's insulation, what is that stuff?
That's the only insulation. Oh, what is it? It's a foam board insulation, a pliable foam board. That's what it's made out of. Antimicrobial, non-organic, but it's only about 1 inch thick. And the purpose it serves, so we don't always use that. So the 3 layers I'm describing are the dimple mat, the foam board, and then the vapor barrier. If we go to a customer's house and they're only concerned with water issues and they don't experience cold floors, right? I don't need to use that insulation. What that insulation, it provides a thermal barrier to keep the earth from sucking the heat out of the crawl space. So as an example, let's say we go to a crawl space that we've encapsulated, it's got HVAC system and ducting running in it. the normal leakage in that ducting system will heat that crawl space. You don't need a lot of heat in a crawl space. It's below grade. But the earth and the walls could absorb that because we know that things move from more temperature to less. So to keep the cinder block walls from sucking the heat out of the crawl space to keep the floors warm, you put a thermal barrier on the wall and a thermal barrier on the floor. And we choose to do it beneath the vapor barrier so that, you know, you still have a intact. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So one thing that you have to note, current code, if it's considered conditioned space, whether it's an attic or a crawl space, has to have an in and out of air.
Yeah.
That means that right now, our current way of doing it is we drill about a 3-inch hole in this supply and go to the furthest space and drill a 3-inch hole in the return and just put a stamped grill over it, rather than cutting in a 4x10.
Yeah.
Or you could also put a supply into, for instance, a crawl, cut a 4x10 in the floor, and that serves as a way for the air to escape. But there has to be an in and out of airflow, not just one.
Right. So one of the, so Journalin, what you know, through HVAC, makes a product called an air share, which looks like a little 4x10 floor register that's got a fan in it. So sometimes we'll encapsulate a crawl space and they've got cold floors, but there's no HVAC down there to do what you just described. And you can put in this transfer grill that can be turned on and off. So during the winter, they can turn it on and it'll take the heat from the first floor and suck it down into the crawl space to provide that heat source.
So you're,
I would never remember to turn that off. I'm glad I'm hooked up to this.
so what you're doing is you're reverting back to the old form of airflow throughout the house where you have, you know, the 3x3 grates in the floor.
Well, those are the grates with the old oil burner things that were hanging to allow the heat to go up. And then you'd cut a hole in the floor above that to allow it to continue, but it's hard to make heat go down. So the fan actually sucks the air from the first floor down. But similar, yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Greg has a question online.
Do you feel that the, as a home inspector, that the lack of an insulation barrier underneath of the vapor barrier is something that should be noted as a deficiency?
No. No, not at all. Because best I know, that's not the code. The only thing that you guys have to inspect it for is the code that says there's a 6 mil plastic on the ground, right? Or no? I mean, that's nothing that you guys would need to be bringing up to customers again. We make things, we fix them because they were built to code, and everything that we do is permanent and you know, fixes the problem. So no, you shouldn't need to mention that to the homeowners.
Thank you.
Unless they ask you, you know, if they ask you, hey, why are my floors cold? You could say you have a vented crawl space. I mean,
He's talking about the insulation under the vapor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if it doesn't have anything to do with that, as a home inspector,
You don't
you
need,
might point it out if you discovered that, man, those pointed gravel is killing your knees and they've got all this stuff down there and you didn't protect it.
yeah, but yeah,
It doesn't have anything to do with the code.
I guess. That's up to you guys, not me. Other questions? What do we got, Mike? Oh, okay. Any last question? 2 minutes left? Yes, sir.
Do you find that radon increases after you encapsulate the crawl space?
It can.
Do you test for that or do you?
We do not. We did radon a couple of years ago. We saw it as a foot in the door, mostly from home inspectors, right? If they got high radon, they could call us and then we go into a crawl space and encapsulate the crawl space. But it just wasn't what we did. So we don't test for radon. We used to give away these free radon kits to homeowners so they could test themselves and send them away, but no, we don't do anything with radon.
What do you do, like, obviously you're encapsulating because you do have mold and mildew and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you do to pre-treat like the wood structure underneath, and do you do anything afterwards to keep it from coming back?
Nothing. I mean, if there was visible mold on the wood before, we do detailed cleaning of mold. We use a product called Mold X2, botanical. So we can fog and spray for mold and clean it while we're there. And our insurance allows us to do that because at the time we clean it, the crawl space is considered outside the house. So it's no different than cleaning mold off your yard. Right? So we could clean it and then we don't really do treat it. We don't like paint encapsulated or anything like that. If you start to keep it dry, if you kill the mold that's there and then dry it out, it should be no problem.
Justin.
And as far as radon goes, actually, my ask of you would be, introduce me to your radon companies. Because they're installing radon in basements and crawl spaces, but they need somebody to encapsulate the crawl space so that their radon works. They're great partners for us as radon companies. Yeah.
Do you leave a 3-inch gap at the top of the wall for?
I was waiting for that. Yeah, I was waiting for that, for the inspection of termites. If you want us to, but my question back to the home inspectors who were asked that is, where's the inspection line in that finished basement that you're gonna look for? For termite inspection, right? The 3-inch gap? I've turned the, so you can see the base plate in a finished basement? Right. So why aren't you raising hell to them? Why are you raising hell to me? Right? So we'll put in it, if the customer is adamant, hey, I need that insulation gap. My pest control company's gonna void my warranty, blah, blah. Okay, cool. We hold a 2x4 up there, we spray it, and then we pull the 2x4 off, so that there's a line. But I mean, honestly, think about that. Where is the inspection line in a base, even in, I mean, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to go too crazy over that, but I knew somebody was gonna ask it. I couldn't believe it took that long to get to it. Anybody else real quick before Scott gives me the yank, gets me out of here? No? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. My cards, I think, are in the cups. So if you want to email me anything or ever have questions, please do. Or if you guys are part of inspection teams, I'm happy to come out and speak to you guys, or even my marketing guy to come speak to you guys as well. So greatly appreciate you guys having me today. Thanks for the invite from you guys, and keep on doing what you're doing. Keep getting educated. It's what it's about. Educate yourself and the customer.
Outstanding job. Thank you, Doug.